begins so quietly that you almost miss it. A soft hiss against the glass, a darkening of the window above the poetry shelf, the faintest smell of wet stone drifting in beneath the door. You set down the small stack of books you have been carrying and simply listen for a moment, the way you always do when the rain comes at this hour, when the last customer has gone and the sign has been turned and the world outside has begun its slow withdrawal into the evening. The shop settles around you. It does this every night, this particular settling, a gentle exhalation of old wood and warm air, and the accumulated quiet of thousands of pages. The lamp on the front desk casts a honey-coloured light across the nearest shelves, and the light does not reach everywhere, which is how you like it. The far corners hold their shadows gently. The high shelves along the back wall disappear into a comfortable dimness that has always felt less like darkness and more like depth. You pick up your stack of books again and move toward the travel section, which is tucked along the left wall between a narrow window and the shelf of oversized art books that nobody ever quite puts back in the right place. Your footsteps are soft on the floorboards. Some of the boards creak and some of them don't, and by now you know each one by heart, the way you know the particular give of the front step and the way the fiction section smells faintly of cedar from the old wardrobe someone used as a display case years ago, long before you came to work here. You pass the wardrobe now, trailing your free hand along its dark wood, and something about the touch of it is grounding, the way solid old things often are. The travel books need a little attention. Someone has left a large illustrated volume on Morocco face down across 3 other spines, splaying them open at awkward angles. You lift the Morocco book first, turn it over in your hands. Let the cover rest against your palm for a moment. There is a photograph of blue-painted walls, a cat asleep in a doorway. Afternoon light so thick and golden it seems almost tangible. You set it right, slide it back into its place with the soft sound of pages finding their neighbours, then the others one by one settling them back into their upright lives. A book on the Scottish Islands, its cover showing grey water and a single white cottage. A guide to Venetian gardens, slim and slightly foxed at the edges. A memoir of walking in Japan, the spine so pale with use it is almost white. You run your thumb along that spine, gently, the way you might rest a hand on the shoulder of something tired. The rain is a little louder now, or perhaps you are simply more aware of it. It comes in waves, slightly, the way rain against glass often does. A gathering and a softening, and a gathering again. The window beside you has begun to bead with water on the outside, each drop catching the distant street light and holding it for a moment before giving way to the next. You watch this for a little while without meaning to, standing with the Japanese walking memoir still in your hand, your place in the task entirely forgotten. There is a particular quality to lamplit rooms when it rains outside, a quality that has no precise name, but that the body knows immediately and responds to with a kind of gratitude. The warmth deepens, the edges of things soften, the room becomes more itself, more interior, more held. You are aware of the smell of the shop in a way that you are not always aware of it, because the rain brings the outside air to the door and the contrast sharpens everything within. Old paper, always. A faint trace of the lemon oil used on the wooden shelves. Something that might be dust, though it is the kind of dust that has been here long enough to become part of the character of the place rather than a failing of it. You slide the memoir back into place and move on. The history shelves run along the back wall, and they are usually quite tidy because the history readers tend to be careful people, methodical, the kind who return a book to exactly the gap it came from. But tonight, there is a small disruption near the ancient world section. Several volumes pulled slightly forward from their shelf, as though someone spent a long time standing here, pulling one out and replacing it, pulling out another, deciding and reconsidering. You understand the impulse. The ancient world section is one of those places in the shop where you can feel the weight of time in a way that is not heavy, but rather the opposite, liberating somehow. All those centuries stacked quietly in their covers. You straighten the volumes that have crept forward. A book on the daily life of Roman Britain, another on the archaeology of Minoan Crete, with a detail from a fresco on its cover, a woman in profile, her dark hair elaborately dressed, her expression utterly calm across the distance of 3,000 years. You linger on this one. You have lingered on it before. There is something about the calm of her face, the way she seems neither to be arriving somewhere nor leaving, simply present within the fragment of painted wall that preserved her, that makes you feel, each time you see it, a loosening of something in your chest. You replace it with care and move along. The lamps in this part of the shop are wall-mounted, small and warm-shaded, and they give the back shelves a quality like firelight without the movement, a steadiness that is deeply comfortable. Your shadow moves with you, large and companionable, sliding across the spines of philosophy books and anthologies of letters and the long shelf of biography that runs floor to nearly ceiling on the right-hand side of the back wall. Biographies of painters, mostly, in this section, and musicians, and a few naturalists, and there is one small biography of a woman who spent her life cataloguing wildflowers in the English countryside, a book so quiet and particular in its subject that it has always seemed to you like the kind of book that only finds the right reader once in a long while, but finds them absolutely. You touch its spine in passing, a habit. Near the window seat at the far end, a throw pillow has fallen to the floor, its embroidered cover turned face down. You pick it up, smooth it, set it back in the curve of the window seat where it belongs. The window here is larger, and the rain is moving across it now in long diagonal lines, the wind having found a gentle direction. You sit on the edge of the window seat for a moment without deciding to, the pillow in your lap, and look out at the street. The street is very quiet. A single lamppost, the dark shapes of parked cars, each one wearing a skin of rain. Across the way, a bakery that closed hours ago, its window dark, the ghost of its daytime smell entirely gone. Further along, someone has left a light on in a flat above a dry cleaner's, and in the window you can just make out the moving blue light of a television, though you cannot see who is watching it or what they are seeing. It is enough, somehow, just to know it is there, that small blue flickering, that somewhere nearby someone is settled in for the evening in the warmest room they have. You set the pillow down and get up, continuing along, though your pace has slowed since the beginning of the evening. The tidying is nearly complete. It has that quality now of a task winding down rather than a task in full motion, the remaining things to straighten being fewer and smaller, the gaps between them longer and quieter. The children's section is at the front of the shop, to the right of the door, and it is always the most cheerful part of the room, even in emptiness. Low shelves painted a dull sage green, a small rug patterned with animals whose species you have never quite been able to determine, a rocking chair in the corner that no adult ever sits in, though it is the perfect height for sitting in, and several times you have found customers' children asleep in it at the end of a long afternoon, their small bodies arranged in the loose, liquid way of children deeply asleep, entirely unguarded. The children's books need almost no attention tonight. A few picture books have been left on top of the shelf instead of on it, probably by small hands not quite tall enough to reach the gaps. You file them away gently, noting the titles as you do. A story about a bear who plants a garden. A book about the moon. A long, thin book about clouds with watercolor illustrations so soft and grey and real-looking that the clouds seem to exist just slightly outside the page, as though the painter were not reproducing the sky, but actually looking at it while they worked. You pause on this one. The rain outside draws your eye to the window again, and through the water-blurred glass, the sky is the colour of the clouds in the book. A deep and textured grey-blue. Not the grey of sadness, but the grey of enclosure, of the whole world quieted under its weight. You close the cloud book and place it on the shelf. The last thing to do is move through the shop once more, not looking for anything specific now, just walking the familiar circuit from front to back and back again, checking by feel as much as by sight that everything is as it should be. The lamps are all on and warm. The till is closed. The door is locked. The sign says what it says. The rain continues outside, and the sound of it has become so woven into the quiet of the shop now that it no longer feels like weather, but like texture, like the particular texture of this evening, this hour, this slow and lamplit closing of the day. You drift past the poetry shelf again, past the cedar wardrobe, past the ancient world with its calm Minoan woman, past the biographies and the letters, and the long wall of fiction that runs the full length of the shop and holds more worlds than you have ever properly counted. Your hand trails along the spines as you walk, a long, slow reading by touch. All those different textures and thicknesses, the tall ones and the thin ones, the cloth-bound and the paperback, the ones so old their spines have softened to the texture of skin. At the back of the shop, there is a small chair, low and deep, its fabric worn to a kind of softness that is not shabbiness, but intimacy, the softness of a thing well and gently used. Beside it, a side table, barely large enough for a cup. Above it, the small wall lamp that gives the best light in the shop, warm and direct and just exactly bright enough for reading without being bright enough for anything else. You reach the chair. You have been moving toward it, perhaps all evening, without knowing it. The rain runs its fingers down the windows. The lamplight pulls and holds. And you sit. You sit. And the chair receives you, the way a chair receives someone who has always been meant to sit in it, which is to say, completely, without resistance, with a kind of quiet gladness that is only felt and never spoken. The cushion gives. Your back finds the back. Your hands rest, one on each arm, and the arms are just the right height. just the right width, worn smooth along the top where hands have rested before yours, many hands over many years. And there is something in that smoothness that is itself a kind of comfort. To feel that others have sat here in just this way, that this particular posture of rest has been practiced here many times, that the chair knows what to do with you. The book you carried through the shop all evening is still in your hand. You had almost forgotten it was there. You look at it now, the cover soft in the lamplight, and you open it somewhere near the middle, not deliberately, just wherever it opens, the way books do when they have been read before and remember their own favourite places. The page you find is full of quiet sentences, small, careful sentences about an afternoon in a garden, about the particular green of light through old apple trees, about a woman sitting at a garden table writing letters she may or may not send. And you read a sentence, and then another, and the words come to you slowly, not because they are difficult, but because slowness is the right speed for them, the speed at which they are fully felt. The rain finds a new rhythm on the glass somewhere behind you, and to the left, a slightly heavier sound, the way rain sounds when the wind adjusts itself a little, finds a new angle, and then that too settles into the general sound of rain, which is itself settling now into something you no longer hear as a sound, but as a quality of the room, something the room is doing, something that makes the inside more inside, the lamplight more lamplit, the chair more precisely and warmly what it is. You read another sentence. It describes the smell of grass after an afternoon shower, the garden filling with that green and open smell, and you almost smell it here, or something like it, the papery smell of the shop, and the distant outdoor smell of rain combining into something that is not quite either, but partakes of both. An evening smell, a closing time smell, the smell of being exactly where you are supposed to be, with nothing else required of you, for now, nothing at all. The lamp above you is steady and warm, the kind of light that does not tire the eyes, but rests them, that does not demand focus, but allows it, gentle and even, and the colour of late afternoon, even here in the middle of evening. And under that light, the book in your hands has a weight to it that is pleasant, balanced. One of those books that sits in the hands without strain, that asks nothing of the body while the mind moves through it, and your mind is moving through it slowly now, along those quiet sentences, into that garden with its apple trees and its woman writing letters, into the particular silence of that invented afternoon. Your eyes move across a line and then rest at the end of it before moving to the next, and sometimes the pause between lines lengthens a little and you become aware of the shop around you in those pauses, the long fiction wall somewhere ahead of you in the soft dimness, the smell of paper and old cloth, the cedar wardrobe with its dark wood and its quiet smell, the small whirls on all the shelves staying carefully where they are, patient and still, waiting as books wait, which is to say, without any sense of waiting at all, simply being present, full of their own interior weather, their own particular hours and rooms and voices. You read the sentence about the apple trees again, or you think you do, or perhaps you simply rest on it, the way you might rest on a line of music, not moving forward yet, just staying there in the green light of those imagined trees, and the chair holds you, and the lamp holds you, and somewhere beyond the windows the rain continues its long, even, thoughtful conversation with the street and the roof and the stone sill and the glass. Your breathing has slowed to match the room. You are not aware of this happening. It simply happens the way your breathing always slows when you have been for a while in a place that is good and quiet, the body recognizing safety, settling into its own natural pace, deep and unhurried. Each breath a long, easy thing, in and down and through, and out again slowly, and the pause between breaths just long enough to feel the stillness in it. The pages of the book shift slightly in your hands, and you adjust them without looking, a small unconscious accommodation, and your eyes find the next sentence, which is about the sound the garden makes in the late afternoon, the specific hush of it, the birds having gone quiet, and the insects not yet begun, that in-between hour when the garden gathers itself and simply is, and you understand this completely. You have felt this, or something so close to it that the difference does not matter, and the understanding is warm and quiet, and sits with you there in the chair, like a companion who requires nothing. The fiction wall breathes in the dim part of the shop beyond the lamp's reach. All those spines, all those colours, too dim now to read but present, felt. The sense of all that accumulated dreaming standing patiently in the dark, shelf after shelf of it, not waiting to be read tonight, simply being what it is, which is to say, fullness, possibility, the particular density of a room where many imagined lives have been gathered together and given their place on a shelf and allowed to rest there in the quiet. Your hands loosen a little on the book. The book stays where it is. You are still reading, or you are reading in that particular way where the words arrive and are received and mean something soft and general rather than something precise, where the garden in the sentences has become not a garden with details, but simply the feeling of a garden. Late afternoon, apple trees, light through leaves, and that feeling is very close to the feeling of here, of this chair, of this lamp, of this slow and woolly closing of the evening into itself. You may have read the same page twice. It does not matter. The woman in the garden is still writing her letters, still sitting in that green and quiet afternoon, and you are still here in the chair, and the rain is still outside, and the lamp is still warm, and these things are all continuing together in a way that is not quite time anymore, but something softer and more lateral than time. Something that does not move forward, so much as deepen, pressing down gently into itself, like a breath held for a moment, and then let go. The shop is so quiet now, not silent, because the rain is there, and somewhere a pipe ticks softly as it cools, and somewhere further still, the faint, indeterminate sounds of the night city going about its business. But those sounds are far away and muffled, and they only add to the quiet rather than disturbing it. They give the quiet its edges, define it, the way a frame gives a painting its sense of being gathered, held, complete. Your head is heavy in the good way, the way it gets when you have been somewhere warm and still for long enough that the body begins to make its own gentle case for rest, and you let it be heavy. You do not resist this. There is nothing here to resist and nothing that needs doing. The shop is closed and tidy, and the lamps are on and the rain is falling, and the books are in their places, and everything is exactly as it should be. The book rests in your hands, or it rests on your lap now. You're not quite sure when that happened, but your hands are still near it, still lightly touching it, one finger between the pages to hold the place, though the place hardly matters now, though you will find the garden again whenever you look. The woman always there at her table, the light always coming through the apple trees in that particular way. The lamp hums its almost silent hum. The rain traces its slow shapes on the glass. The cedar wardrobe stands in the dark of its corner, smelling of itself, of all the years of its standing there. The fiction wall breathes. Your breath slows. The chair is warm. The book is there. The rain. The lamp. The quiet.